Test, test, one, two, three. Check, check.
Hello.
It's 6:43. Let's call the Sunshine meeting to order. We don't have to do all the, this is just a Sunshine meeting, which is a little different than a workshop or a council meeting. So I don't know if you want to. No, it's a Sunshine meeting. We don't have to, but it's a Sunshine meeting. So.
I'll let the manager introduce.
All right. What you have before you, there's one document that I sent you earlier today. And what it is, we were asked to provide by one of the members of the council a listing of new expenditures. We thought it would be more valuable to not only list for you new expenditures, but also those line items that maybe had significant changes, because, and I think we felt that it would be more complete for this recap. So you also have before you a document here, a spreadsheet with as we go through each and every one of the funds. I'll go through the recap first, real quick, just so you see some of the highlights of the proposed budget. We took into account the comments that were made, or the suggestions, the recommendations, the requests that were made at the first Sunshine meeting, and we believe that we've incorporated most, if not all, of the requests and comments that were made at the first Sunshine meeting. So I want to just go through here. The first item is that in here, throughout the entire document between the different funds and the different departments, you're going to see numbers that reflect an inflationary COLA of 2.8%, which is what we presented to you last time. And in comparison, the CPI for the last 12 months for the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach area represents 5.4. So the 2.8 is what we believed was appropriate for this request. In addition, we've also incorporated in here, in response to the comments that were made last Sunshine meeting, a program that is a performance-based bonus. We didn't have to recreate the wheel. That program already existed here. We already have an evaluation form and an ordinance that creates this program. And what we're proposing is that based on the evaluations of each employee, they would be entitled to an annual bonus, a one-year bonus, between 0 to 1.5. So in the evaluation form, there are 4 categories: exceptional, above average, satisfactory, and below average. So if at the end of the evaluation, the employee's final recommendation or total evaluation reflects a below average evaluation, then they would be entitled to 0, to no bonus. If they are satisfactory, they would be entitled to a 0.5%, 0.5%, 0.5. If they're above average, we're recommending a 1% bonus. And then if they're exceptional, we're recommending a 1.5% bonus. And that's how we account for the range in the information there. We're also in here, I'm going to skip through, I'm not going to go each line by line. I'm going to hit the major highlights. There's some increases to the rate from FRS. That's something we don't have control over. We have in here something that used to be funded in the past and we propose to fund now again, is having paid interns. We believe it's a good developmental tool. It's also a good recruiting tool. Several of our staff members were at one point paid interns here in the town, and we believe that it's a good recruiting tool to bring young professionals into our organization.
Mr. Manager, just real quick, the first 3 items that you described, I see that all the other subsequent items have a monetary number attached to them. Do you know what that monetization of those first 3 items?
Yeah, these are a little more difficult because they're scattered throughout the entire document, because some people are funded from the general fund and in different departments. We can make that, we can recap that, and we can provide that. We can get that for you.
Okay.
We also are recommending to reinstate council travel and per diem, education, and health wellness initiative. What that health wellness initiative is, you'll be happy to know, is we are proposing to fund the nutrition at the council meetings in the future. So that's an amount. So we can feed you, and not chocolate chip cookies. We'll hope to feed you something more healthy. In here reflects the federal lobbyist that was hired. That was not in last year's adopted budget. That was brought on mid-year. We're also recommending to reinstate staff and travel and per diem, education and training. We have an amount in here for a new town website, $100,000 for a new town website. Our website is something that's quite antiquated. We believe that we need to bring in our technology. In here, throughout this entire document, you're going to see several instances where we're trying to enhance and upgrade our technology. We are a little behind the 8 ball, and it's not anybody's fault. It's mostly because we haven't dedicated resources to it, financial resources to it. Last year, we increased our internet service with a stronger bandwidth, so that's the $3,300 there. We want to improve our antivirus threat response. One big item that's in here is the police contract. In dollar amounts, it looks staggering, right? It's $245,000. It is our largest expense in the town, but we all have to keep in mind that these are the men and women that patrol our streets 24/7. They investigate our crimes. They keep us safe. But when you look at the dollar amount, even though the dollar amount looks impressive, it represents a less than 3% increase in the cost of police services. In here's another technology item, which is the park reservation software. The park reservation software in our resident survey that we conducted was one of the lowest items that was surveyed in our program. So we want to enhance the reservation software. The one that we're proposing will allow for people to be able to create their own accounts and register and create and do all of the reserving. We also will have the ability down the road to bring in our partners, like the providers that provide services in the parks, to have their registration processes conducted on our system. So that's what that is there. Now the next few items are dealing with parks. If you remember that over the last year or two, when we had the issue with the transition of the FP&L franchise fee from underneath the county contract to having our own standalone, we had to cut back in several areas. And what we're proposing in here is to reinstate several items that deal with our parks. Our parks is obviously one of our #1 priorities, which it represents what Miami Lakes is all about, and we want to bring them back to the level that we have in the past with regard to some of the, with repair and maintenance. We're increasing that. And they also increase our telephone service at Mary Collins, parks improvement to the Mary Collins facility. At MLOP, we believe that there's going to be an increase now of rentals, so we're going to enhance our janitorial services for the weekend rentals. We're going to also reinstate repair and maintenance of the facility. Many parks, we're going to dedicate some more money towards repair and maintenance and on the grounds, as well as the contracts. Some of these contracts we have funded at certain levels, and then they haven't performed, so we haven't paid or we've asked them to scale back. What we want to do is we want to get the mowing cycles, we want to get all the mulching cycles, we want to get the beach restoration cycles back to where they need to be, so we don't continuously get these comments, these phone calls from the residents. Hey, the park by my house, the grass is high. We want to get back to where we were a couple years ago and increase those mowing cycles and the cycles in all of the parks. With community outreach and engagement, we want to increase our pop-up events. We have an item in here, a small item for the maintenance of our trailer, which has been a tremendous branding opportunity for the town. It's going to be used for a lot of some community events. It's also being used in the event of any emergency. It's stocked with items that can be deployed. It's got a generator, it's got an air conditioning, it's got chairs, it's got coolers. It's really ready to go, and that kudos to Willie's for putting that together, and he's made a great asset to the town in our response for regular community events, as well as the capabilities for emergency response. On the second page, there's a few odds and ends with several committees that we've added some dollars. It's not a large amount, but we did want to reflect that. These different committees, I think there's 6 committees that got some minor increases in some of their budgets. In Public Works, the town engineer that we have a contract town engineer, Ernesto, who does a lot of the field inspections on sidewalk repairs and things of that nature. We are stepping up our infrastructure program, and we just want to put a little more money towards that contract to make sure that he's available and funded whenever we need him to conduct field inspections. Public Works, repair and repair maintenance. For the green space, we're restoring that to its pre-2019 levels or 2020 levels. Another item that was brought up last month, or last Sunshine meeting, was an increase in the legal reserves. The legal reserves, as we know, have gotten down to the $135,000 level. We're allocating $65,000 more to legal reserves, bumping it up to $200,000, and I know that was something that was discussed last meeting. And finally, in here, as we did the last time, we are proposing, as we were directed by this council ahead of time, we proposed in here a increase in the FP&L franchise fee to 6%. So with that 6%, it represents for this first year a $900,000 extra in revenue. And this is the breakdown you'll see there: repair for streets, for sidewalks, for street lights, tree trimming, tree removal. This is the proposer recommended breakdown if that $900,000 comes to fruition. If the 6% is modified to a different level, 4%, 5%, 5.5%, 4.5%, 5.25%, whatever the number is, we'll accommodate the breakdown to reflect the total number. And the last two things are out of the building department. We're proposing to take put our big toe in the water and venture into electric vehicles. We're putting a number in here. We're doing our due diligence now to see if the right vehicle is something that we buy, or maybe we can go in with a lease. We've had conversation with several companies, so we're exploring that, and we have this number that we believe will either get us, if we buy, we believe one vehicle. If we lease, we may be able to get multiple vehicles up front, but we'll also have some infrastructure costs to make it happen with the charging station. And finally, one of the last thing here was a kind of a response to the Building Ad Hoc Committee when they talked about the technology in the building department. We're proposing to put some money towards an upgrade of the Track-It system that is used not only in building but in several departments, and we want to make that flourish as much as we can. So that's here.
Can I ask you a quick question about that?
Yes.
Can this be purchased with, I know that we always have a surplus in the building department, in the funds for the building department. Can that be purchased with those funds?
When we get to the building department, you'll see it's not always a surplus. There's a reserve that kind of gets carried from year to year. And in good years, when there's a lot of development, a lot of construction, the building permits are high, then we add to that cushion. In years when development is lower and building permit applications are lower, then we actually have to draw from that. Mm-hmm. We kind of mitigate that to an extent because we have several staff members that are employees, and those are kind of our baseline, our constant. Mm-hmm. But then we also have several of our employees in the building department that are on individual ICAs, individual contract agreement. Okay. So what it is some of the plans review guys, some of the inspectors, if we're doing fewer inspections, fewer plans review, we can close that spigot a little bit, mm-hmm. and we don't have that expense. And we mitigate that, but that's on the fringes. We have our base, and that base carries us for the day-to-day. But then we also have the ILA guys, the part-timers and the ILA guys that we can use them a little more or a little less depending on the demand.
Right, but I remember in years past that reserve account, or I guess surplus account, was pretty high.
So when we get to the building section, the summary itself, it has it all commingled, but the reserve for the technology portion is $618,757 for next budget year, and the reserve for the administrative portion is $307,693.
So that's the total reserve that we have in the building department?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's segregated between technology and why is
And
that
the
separate?
administrative portion.
Why is that separated like that?
It's separated, I believe it's because of Florida statute and
Florida
ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because, we charge a pretty expensive, I know just the auto mall with their parking garage, they pay like $30,000 in technology fees. So, I mean, yeah, and all that money, I mean, we should definitely put it to use. I mean, it's just sitting there.
Right,
Technology
anything-
fees supposed to be meant to help people, like help our customers.
No, and I agree with that 100%.
Right, so
So
I
that's
agree
why I was asking if this could be paid from that
Yeah, yeah.
fund. I mean, that,
And especially the other, what is it, the other 300-something thousand in reserves from the
For
building
the
department?
administrative portion.
For the administrative portion, I mean, so those.
And that's
I-
what we're budgeting for next year, or what we perceive to be the contingency reserve based on whatever we carry forward.
okay, perfect, thank you. Yes, absolutely, thank you,
By all means,
Come on.
absolutely, come on
thank
up.
you.
Good, but use the mic,
Yeah.
Ismael, the microphone.
But I agree with you, Councilman Morano. I mean, there has to be.
Yeah, there's no need to have a surplus like that if there's things that we can improve.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Ismael Diaz, CFO for the town. So within the building department ordinance, there's a clause in there that says that we actually appropriate 10% of every building permit. And that has to be earmarked for technology fees. And we can only spend that money in technology fees. So if you look at your CAFR, if you look at your financial statements, we make a differentiation between the operations of the building department and how much we have in the technology fees. And we don't spend the technology fees money on the operations of the building department only if it's directly related to any type of technology. And that's the way that that works. But it's in the ordinance.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, let's,
Mr. Manager, before we go
Yes.
forward, I do have one question, or actually two questions. One is related to the Track It upgrade, and thank you to our CFO Ismael for clarifying that. And I'm in agreement with the mayor and Councilwoman Morano. If we have a bucket of money that we can leverage to upgrade the track, I'd love for it to come out of there rather than out of general revenue or anywhere else.
yeah, the money
in the
for the
budget.
Track It upgrade will be coming from the technology.
Got it. Is it monetized? I didn't see a dollar. Again, going back to the same question that I asked before, do you have some semblance of how much that would be?
The Track It update,
Correct.
Danny, I think it's in the neighborhood of 130-something thousand.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, but-
It's just, there's more than enough in the
Yeah.
fund to
Yes.
cover that expense.
Yes.
The other thing, and I know that you're doing this for illustrative purposes because you were asked to by someone on the council, our franchise fee is currently at 3%, correct?
sir.
So everything here is basically just doubling what we would currently fund. Is that a correct assumption, or is there some skewing of the numbers somewhere?
Well, remember what happens, right? With the initial 3%, the 3% that we've been charging, right? That 3% just goes into the general fund bucket. And it's not earmarked for anything specific. And then obviously on the expense side, we allocate money from various sources towards street repair, sidewalks, and what the ordinance or the resolution that was passed by this council was anything over that 3%, and I'm generalizing it, but anything over the 3% is earmarked only for specific purposes, only for street repair, street lights, sidewalks, trees, and that's it. It cannot be used for general parks maintenance. It cannot be used for anything else. It can only be used for the items that were approved in that legislation.
So the question that I'm asking is, just to have a side-by-side, like what is currently being funded for street repairs and maintenance? We know that you would augment it 362,000, but what is it currently being funded at?
You have that?
If we were to keep it at 3%?
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
Actually, you know what, because I hate working on the fly like that, and it puts an immense amount of pressure on you.
we
If you can,
got it.
if you can just give it back to me on the other stuff, on the other numbers that you're gonna compile that have to do with the COLA and the FRS and the performance-based raises, that'll be fine.
If I'm not mistaken, the numbers that are reflected here in this breakdown for these items would far exceed the amount of money that we're allocating currently. But we'll double check and give you exact dollars. All right.
I have a quick question since we brought up the technology fee in the building department. how does, so I kind of understand some other things, like electricity at town hall and things like that get cost allocated, a portion of the cost gets allocated back to the building department. A lot of, I would imagine a lot of the traffic that goes to the town website, it gets funneled into the building department. Is that something that we can look at, like the $100,000 improvement for the town website, possibly allocating a portion of that cost to the building department as well?
We'll take a look and see if the legislation allows for that. But if we can, we'll do that. You know, I guess my only caveat would be, we gotta resist the urge for the building department fund to be the go-to fund. And obviously, they should pay their fair share, 100%, and I agree with you. But we gotta be careful, because if development really slows down, then we're starting to, just for regular operations and that core group, that base group of staff and our base operations, then we gotta start drawing from reserves just to, without any of the extras. So I just wanna, but we'll check and see if that's doable, and we'll have that answer for you.
And just to be a little bit more specific, specifically the technology fee portion of the building department, not the administrative part.
We will.
I think that Councilmember Fernandez makes a good point, and many of the recommendations that were presented by the ad hoc committee had to do with linking things to our website and making things more accessible through the website. So I would assume that even if the website only has a small amount of it being used for the building department now, once all of those recommendations are put into place, there will be more components of the website that will be designated for the building department.
Yeah, I could tell you that there are things, and Councilmember Fernandez alluded to it, there are things regarding this facility that, the maintenance, the electricity, all of the expenses for this facility, we divvy them up by square footage. So a certain percentage based on square footage is charged to the building fund. A certain percentage based on square footage is attributed to police, and then the rest of it is general administration. Now, obviously, the police is general fund, general administration is general fund, so that portion. But there is a portion of all of the facility expenses that is attributed to the building fund, and the distribution is made by square footage.
I have a question for Danny Angel. So Danny, just quick question, and just kind of in line with everything that's being said. I know we have several openings, right? It's an opportunity in the building department. But seeing how, building permits are cyclical, and understanding our long-term liabilities in the department and stuff like that, are we looking more as to our traditional model, contracting out most of the positions that are there, or are we looking more at a long-term liability, bringing people on board as full-time employees? I mean, just so when we budget or we vote on the policy-wise, we vote on something, we understand what the long-term liabilities look like.
Yeah, and you can see that in our proposed budget, specifically in the salary line item for the building department. There's an estimated reduction already of about $300,000 to $400,000, and that's because we're already transitioning the traditional full-time model of our plans reviewers to the part-time model.
Got it. I just want to say that's a great job, because that's smart. I mean, that's what I've kind of done my own due diligence, and most cities are going in that direction, leveraging more technology and doing that. So that's a really good job. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to that, I think that we've already demonstrated that we are willing to look outside the box. And when we had the departure of the last building official and the permit coordinator, we started looking at a different model, and we promoted Danny into that position, who's not a building official, and we're looking and seeing how we can not do it because we've done it like that for 20 years. We stood back and we say, is there a different or a better way that we can do it? And we did that with the staffing model that we've been creating. All right, so if we go to the spreadsheet that you have before you, and by the way, just for your own edification afterwards, I know you got it here in hard copy, but I've also emailed it to you a little while ago, so you'll have it in an electronic copy. So if we go down, this is the general fund at the beginning. Ad valorem taxes increased. We have there the franchise fee. The franchise fee is essentially flat from previous years. The line there highlighted in yellow is the marginal one. We'll have to decide on what, give us direction on how you want to go with that, with the surplus franchise fee. All of the other items are there. State revenue sharing actually had a nice bump up to almost $200,000, and half-cent sales tax was over $100,000. And you see the column in green near the center of the page, that's the budget line that we're proposing for next year. The purple, just to the right of that, is the variance from this year's proposed budget to last year's adopted budget. If you go down into the expenditure line, you see some of the changes that we're proposing, that we're going down. Under administration, there's an increase of $203,000. The lion's share of that is the new website. That's $100,000. So that number looks a little skewed, and it's because the new town website is in that category there under administration. We already
Councilman Fernandez, I mean, you know this better than anybody else. Is that a real number? I mean, you do this. You're all over the United States doing this type of stuff. Is that a real?
So if it was if it was a new entity, if it was a new thing, if we were forming a town tomorrow, it'd probably be a little high. I would imagine part of the expense is converting legacy data, converting information that's on the website that's been there for 20 years, and getting that rolled in, and I would imagine that is a pretty voluminous undertaking. Yeah, I think it's within bounds. I'll give you an example. I think the park reservation software at $68,716 is totally out of bounds. So and we'll get there when we get there.
Out of curiosity, sticking on the website, that also includes any technology necessary to make it ADA compliant, right? Because that's been an issue that we've been having.
The development of a new website would be ensuring that it's ADA compliant.
Thank you.
All right, we talked already about the police. They had a less than 3% increase, but the dollars are high. But that's a big exposure that we have. On the second page, you see the top, a pretty significant increase in Parks and Recreation. That's the reinstatement of the mulch cycles and the beach sand refurbishment, as well as some of the personnel costs that we've talked about with the inflationary COLA, as well as the bonus. And if you go down, some of the other items here, one big item that just stands out is the increase in the non-departmental. And that one is a carry forward, mostly comprised of a carry forward of $60,000. That was the money that's sitting there allocated for the Educational Advisory Board. So it looks a little skewed, but it's basically a carry forward amount. And that's it for the general fund. Those are the highlights. Obviously, as we're required, we put before you here a balanced general fund that's in line with the millage rate that you approved, or the maximum millage rate that you approved when we met back last month. If you move forward into the page 3, you have some of the other funds. The special revenue fund, the gas, transportation gas tax. In here is where we have a lot of the expenditures for ADA compliance with sidewalks, traffic calming, potholes, and we are proposing to make significant investments here. Some of the items like striping and signage, you see actually that they're reduced. We believe that the lion's share of the striping will be done with the money that you allocated in this current fiscal year, and the signage also, the damaged street signs. So we do have a number in here for street signs, mostly to account for if anyone gets hit by an errant car and things of that nature. The following page is the Special Revenue Fund for Transit. These are the PTP numbers. The first one here will account for some of the funding goes towards the salary and benefits of our transportation manager. We have in here the services for the freebie. Freebie is enhanced. You'll notice we're adding the second big freebie bus that will do the route to the Metro Rail station. So some of those numbers are increased. That is partly paid for by a grant and partly paid for by this fund.
Do we have ridership numbers for the freebies?
We can get them. Yeah, they're available. We just have to ask for them, and they provide them. And Mike Sias probably gets them regularly, so I can provide those to you.
Okay, we don't have the new larger vehicle, the one that's going to be transporting to the.
I don't believe it hasn't started.
That
yet.
hasn't started yet.
Right. So we don't have experience on that yet. You know, a significant. I don't believe it started yet. We're just starting to promote it now.
What's the cost of that additional freebie for that service? Just for the trips to.
And Herman, in the meantime, because those freebie numbers are on the website, if you could just pull the performance measure to answer Councilman Serrano's question, because I mean, you put those on the website on a quarterly basis, so I know you have it. You're on the ball with that.
Thank you, Herman.
We'll get that for you.
Thank you, it's okay, thank you.
All right, the next one is the black olive removal program. There's small dollars in there. This is primarily money that's being carried forward from the current budget into next year. We have the People's Transportation Plan. This is the PTP money. This is the allocation of the transportation portion. From here, we have some salaries that go towards some of our staff members. We have transportation studies is funded in here. Our street lighting is the utility is paid for from this fund. The street lighting utilities for electricity as well as any improvements to it.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. When we discussed this last year, we had a conversation about other things that we can do with PTP funding. I remember that we discussed possible sidewalk repairs or other types of expenditures. I'm not sure if that was explored in this budget.
We have that already, and if you go back,
So most of our PTP funds right now are allocated specifically for the 59th Avenue project. So any extra funds that we have within PTP, it goes towards that fund.
Do we know-
We have it earmarked for that.
So but is that the money that we use for the freebie as well?
So we get an allocation from CITT, and a portion goes towards transit, and a portion goes towards transportation. The transit portion is for freebie. The transportation portion of this, we allocate those funds for capital
59,000.
projects. And right now, the main project that we have those funds
Okay,
allocated for
and then
is
the
for 59.
transit portion of those funds would not be the portion that we could use for any other improvements, like sidewalks or lighting or anything like that? That's specific to transit?
Ask your question again?
The two components from that money is, right? One is transportation and one is transit. That those transit funds, we are only allowed to use them
Yes.
for something like the freebie or like the bus that we
Yes.
used to have?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
all right. If you go now to mobility fee, there's really only one potential project that's going to add new revenue to mobility fee this year, which is the development of the northern portion of the Dunn property, the little island that's in the works to potentially be developed. So we're estimating that could add 41,000 in revenues, and everything else is held in contingencies for future capital projects dealing with mobility. And there's a portion that's $100,000 from this year will be sent over also for the 59th Avenue project.
What page are you on again?
Page 7, just turning away from 7 to 8. A lot of these upcoming funds are like the special revenue fund. This one is Large Park and Greenway. This is just money that's going to be pushed, the balances that are in here are just being pushed from the 21 budget to the 22 budget, carry forward. Under the building fund, we had some conversations about that already. The building fund revenues are estimated to be, for permits, 1.2, technology fees, 123,000. We have a carry forward of 1.8 million, and personnel services, we have 1.5. Operating expenses are there. There's not significant increases other than the capital improvements. We're going to purchase the electric vehicles and the Trackit software. That's going to be a big increase from all the other ones are actually decreases from the current fiscal year. Impact fees for parks improvements. This is just, right now there's no budgeted amount for any new impact fee. If there's development and we get park impact fees, it would go in here, but right now there's none budgeted. So this is just pushing this from this current fiscal year and carrying it forward into fiscal '22. The same holds true with parks open space. We kind of have there's about $1 million, a little over $1 million in park open space, and we'll also push that from this year into the next fiscal year. And with these funds, there's very limited things that you can use it for, right? So we got to make sure that we keep it in line.
In the context of the Part 3 park, which I believe was a big reason why there's so much being held in that fund, the intent was, and just refresh my mind, please, the intent was to use that money to remediate the park, to acquire the park, or to build it out?
The original plan was there wouldn't be any acquisition costs, right? The
That's
grants
right.
were going to just, transfer the park to us. So this was more for the development of the park. It wasn't until after that that it all went south because of the contamination or the supposed contamination of the park. And that's where we are. The Grahams have been dealing with Miami-Dade County Durham, trying to get if there are going to be mitigation costs, to minimize them, so that their intent is still to be able to someday be able to transfer that park or that parcel of land to the town for a passive park.
Thank you.
Under impact fees for public safety, there's approximately $97,000 there, and that money is being pushed from this year into next year, also to continue to fund the LPR program. We are, right now, we just recently awarded, and Jeremy, if you're there, the LPR, right, an award for LPRs for $45,000? So for 170th and 170th Street and 87th Avenue.
Jeremy, what's the timeline on that? Permitting with our building department? Amen. Got it. Good job.
Okay. In lieu of road impact fees, this money is also earmarked for 59th Avenue. What this is, the lion's share of this money is road impact fees that we made a request through the TPO, through the county, for almost $1.9 million of road impact fees to be used towards the 59th Avenue project. I don't know if you remember when I first got here, a big portion of mobility fee was kind of forecasted in the original budgets. Mobility fee for certain projects that really never came to fruition. So we had to completely, even though the project had already gone, kicked off and was underway, we had to look at the budget and look at funding sources and kind of be a little more realistic on where the money was going to come from. So what we try to do is with mobility fee is we try not to budget mobility fee because it's such a question mark, right? Such a variable. So what we did is we initiated the process for the request for the road impact fees. It started all the way back when Michelle Gonzalez was still here. And Mike Sias has done a yeoman's job of pushing that forward. We're almost at the point where it's got its final approval, and we expect it to happen soon, and that money will go towards the 59th Avenue, complete the funding process. All right. the debt service fund, this is really also just pushing, this is for the payment of the bonds on the town hall debt. Then finally, well, not finally, but the next one is the stormwater utility fund. If you notice, the stormwater utility fees under the green column, the 21-22 proposed budget column, they're dramatically increased, and that's as a result of the change in the ERU rate. And we have in here $2.6 million in utility fees. We have some salaries and benefits are paid out of here, and all of the operational expenses are paid out of here. Debt service is the, on the CUNIP bonds, is paid out of here, and the canal maintenance and things of that nature. So most of the operational things are shown right there. And then the next page, page 16, will show you the breakdown. Ismail did a great job of making sure that we don't muddy the waters, right? So all of the money from the stormwater bond sale is going to be earmarked and accounted for separately, as well as, and you'll see in a minute, the money that we're projecting and that we're expecting from the American Rescue Plan for more drainage project, that money will be accounted for separately in a sub-fund. So in here you see the stormwater bonds. As you know, we had a very successful sale. The proceeds were $18.2 million, and that exceeded the 15.5 that we were authorized to do. We had a premium at sale, which was very successful, and that's a tribute to the entire team that we put together, internally as well as external professionals that we hired.
Ismail, quick question. So I heard the CUNIP got mentioned, please shed some light on that, because I know that there was a sunset at one point. Where's CUNIP? Where's the payment for, the entire payment for?
Are we talking about stormwater?
The CUNIP.
Yeah, there's no QNIP in stormwater. There is a.
No, in debt service, in the
Debt
debt
service.
service fund.
Okay, and what is the question, sir? I'm sorry.
No, CUNIP, well, I'm just trying to figure it out. I know one of the county bonds was sunsetting.
When does it end? I think 24.
24, somewhere around 24, 24 and a half.
Got it, no, I
Yeah,
just,
it's,
yeah, okay. Yeah, because that allows us to, going forward, to see, yeah, Councilman Dieguez.
No, I think CUNIP is for the parks, right? The pocket parks that we took over from the county?
Yeah, QNIP is for the infrastructure of the town when the town became a municipality.
Okay, I think what the mayor's referring to, there was, I remember, a separate sort of debt service that we had for the canal maintenance.
Yeah, so that's one.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, most of the county bonds, I know there were sunset dates, but it allows us to forecast, differently. Especially like knowing, I didn't know that, I wish it would have been on here, just saying that it sunsets in 24, and the actual amount. Like this year alone, what's the amount on CUNIP?
Got it.
Well, there's two things. There's the QNIP for the town, separate from the bond from the stormwater and canal maintenance. So stormwater has two different debts. They both sunset 23, 24. And those are, I think, a total of like $80,000 between both of them. That's in stormwater. And then we have the QNIP for the town that sunsets around 24 and a half, I think, also. And that one is $142,000. And that's for the town.
Got it. No, so about 220,000.
Yeah, because there was some
stormwater.
confusions in the past that we had a QNIP for stormwater, but that is incorrect. We have a QNIP for the town. That's when we took all the infrastructure for the town, when we became a municipality. And then we have for stormwater, we have the bonds, which actually has been refinanced like twice, but we always benefit from that. And then we have the dredging and the canal maintenance.
Got it. No, it's forecasting
But
purpose,
they all-
that's only 2 years away, and that's a substantial
They all
amount of money.
sunset in 24, and as a matter of fact, we have we posed a question to the county if we were to get out of some of those debts quicker, if we had some savings. So we have posed those questions. We don't have an answer yet, so I don't think it's going to be able to be, used for this budget if we wanted to do something like that, but we want to have some options.
Got it. No, thank you. I think Those are just good things to know, because that's 2 years away, you know, so it's a good forecasting tool.
All right, on page 17, you see the facility maintenance fund, and this is where the expenses are attributed from the police, from the building department and the administration. This is, although the funds come into here, and then from here, the things are paid out for the utilities, for the salaries and benefits, for the facility staff, and so forth. All right, the capital fund for the facility maintenance, this is just items that are pushed from last year, or from the current year into the next year. We do have one portion that we are allocating from here. This is $10,000 to complete the funding for the police security fencing over here that we committed to have ready, not ready, but at least started by October the 1st. We should be bringing to you now probably at the first budget hearing, September 7th, an item for the procurement of the police fencing. So finally, that is going to be awarded. All right, the next one is the capital fund for the Parks and Recreation. We have $1.3 million there in the balance. So this money is, we have $250 for the senior center build-out. We have money there for the MLOP storage facility. We have some money here for the master plan, the money that for the MLOP master plan. And Bridge Park has a $80,000 allocation and $150,000 in here for the Part 3.
Mr. Manager.
Sir.
On the storage facility, what's the status of that? Because that's something that's been discussed since I got on the council in 2018. So
Trust me, yeah, it's a frustrating item for us over here on staff. When we were moving forward, we had designs of a building to completely demolish the building that's there and have it reconstructed. Then the problem surfaced that it was in a floodplain. When they saw the elevation certificate, they would have had to have completely raised the property a certain number of feet. So we couldn't. You'd have to level the whole property and rebuild it and elevate the lot there. So we looked at some other items. We looked at possibly building the building and then putting some flood panels that can be installed in the event that a storm is coming or what have you. Ultimately, I think the route that we're going now is a prefabbed building. But we've seen a lot of different prefab buildings, some that look like they only belong in an industrial zone, some that are more indicative of what Miami Lakes looks like, and that's the avenue that we're exploring now, to get a prefab building that will be meet all the codes and we'll be able to put on there. So it'd be a complete demolition and a brand new prefab building, steel building that would be there. That would be aesthetically pleasing to the neighborhood.
Yeah, of course, something that's compatible with everything else that's projected to occur there at the park. And the Bridge Park expense, is that just maintenance there, or no, this is capital fund? So
Yeah, it's just sitting there.
Okay.
Sitting there for future.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
These are allocations that are kind of distributed of where these monies are, but this is for future expense,
Got it.
for these capital projects.
Tony, I know you worked on these contracts for that park in the past, but the storage facility at MLOP, is that still contractually required? I know at one point we had made a deal with the vendor, and we were utilizing it as office space when I first got elected, and it was being utilized. But I know our vendor uses it now, and they're the only ones in there. Is that contractually required still? I know that was talked about at some point.
Under the contract, it's not necessarily required. We do have a stipulation for them to have space in a location, but it's not necessarily specific to a specific location.
And it has to be covered space, or it could just be fenced-in space? Because the more I think about it, I mean, yeah, it's great, but I know $189,000 to put in a prefab, where it was being utilized before as office space, right? I mean, I think when I first got elected, that's why I think you were working out of there, or Oreo and a bunch of other folks were working out of that office. But I think now nobody uses that as an office. It's just equipment is in there. right?
Yeah, I mean, the vendors do have high-priced equipment that does need to be secured and maintained in the premises. And that's one of the challenges, some of that equipment exposed to the elements, if we just left it open-ended, could create some maintenance issues for those pieces of equipment and also make it susceptible for security purposes.
Got it. So it's not so much for the town's, it's more for our vendor that maintains MLOP.
Correct.
Got it.
Now, with the prefab building that we are contemplating, we are exploring, we are pricing it out with added extra space for town storage. So we have a lot of committee stuff, we have emergency management items that we don't really have a place to store them. So what we are looking at is within the same footprint, we are looking to enhance the space, and like the mayor was saying, some of the space now has an office that nobody would use and so forth. So the space that the new building is gonna have some amount of square footage that would be dedicated to public works and emergency management for storage of town equipment and supplies.
I have a question regarding the senior center, and I remember that at some point in time we discussed, I think it was $500,000 for the build-out. I see now that we have $250,000 allocated. If that senior center were to be built, where would the remaining $250,000 need to come from?
We don't know right now.
Okay.
It's not budgeted for right now.
Right, and I know that consistently we've been asking Tallahassee to help, and we've asked for that to be a legislative priority. I'm assuming that's gonna continue to be a legislative priority in perpetuity until we have that senior center built. When's the timeline of that senior center?
The Grahams are the ones that are really kind of driving that train, because it depends on when they kickstart the development of the senior village that they would. We've had some discussions with them about doing some of the construction work simultaneously and, with them. So they have not given us a timeline as to when they are going to reignite that project. So that's what it's dependent on.
So nothing that you would see being built in this fiscal budget, 21-22, that would make that something that we should budget for?
Correct. And I agree with you. We have requested it from the state legislature. We will have before you at the September council meeting recommended legislative priorities for some funding items based on feedback that we've gotten from the lobbyists and some discussions with some of you. And in there, we'll also reapply for an appropriation for the build out of that senior center.
Thank you.
All right, under capital, I did that already. Under capital fund transportation, we have a balance there of $7.8 million. The lion's share of that is money that's set aside there for the 59th Avenue. We have some allocation, small one for town contributions towards the Safe Routes to School. The two projects, the Miami Lakeway South project, as well as the Miami Safe Routes for the Bob Graham, that's going to start in design this coming fiscal year. And adaptive signalization has a small amount. Under stormwater capital stormwater, in here you have money that's been in the project for a large chunk for the West Lakes Drainage Project, as well as the 83rd Place Drainage Project that was budgeted by this council last fiscal year. And then, I believe we're near the end, the Infrastructure Sinking Fund, we're going to allocate again the $150,000 mandate. That will give us a balance of $365,000. There are some items, some AC replacement at Town Hall, West Park cabinets, partitions, second AC at Royal Oaks, and these are $145,000 worth of projects, and these are all items, Vice Mayor, I know that's something that you've asked several times, these are all items that are contained on the asset list that was used to develop the sinking fund.
And more importantly, they've come to the life expectancy, they've come to the year where they need to be replaced.
Correct. And then finally, on the last page, 23, is the projected revenue from the first tranche of the American Rescue Plan. As I sent you in an email a day or two ago, I thought there'd be more happiness over there. Nobody, I think Councilmember Dieguez was the only one that had reacted to it. It's an extra almost $2.5 million or $2.6 million more than what the original numbers were. And when I saw that, I got scared, and I said, man, I just hope that the state didn't put a wrong number on the funding agreement. So I reached out to all the other city managers in Miami-Dade County, and every city got a significant increase in their allocation. So something happened behind the scenes that all non-entitlement cities in Dade County got extra money. So that's great news. So in this next, they're going to provide that distribution in 2 years. You know, so the first distribution in this coming year will be 7.8, and then a year from now will be another 7.8. And I know Public Works is already doing what they need to do to prepare for that, to make sure that we get those projects started just as fast as we have with the bond money.
Yeah, and I, for one, am very happy to see that increase. I think we're very fortunate in a way to be getting those funds and then coupling that with the bond and the premium that we got from that bond sale. I think when we were talking about it earlier, I think we said it was something like $34 million.
Yeah, 34 or 35, so it only leaves like 19 or 20 from the to-do list, the 54 million to-do list. It only leaves 19 or 20 million dollars.
Well, looking at the unfunded list that we get at the council meetings all the time, that would leave us with $4 million in immediate needs, I guess. So I think that is excellent. I think it's important that we keep the focus on the stormwater. I think this is the constant thing that I know my colleague has brought up before, Councilwoman Morano, that, you know, sometimes it feels like, you know, we get distracted and it's like squirrel, and like there's a new project that comes up that catches our interest, and we start jumping around instead of focusing on knocking out the big projects one at a time. And so I think we need to make sure that we keep all these dollars focused on knocking out this huge need in our community and not get distracted trying to move it towards some other things. I think that, you know, with time, we'll have other opportunities to knock out other big projects, but let's get this one done.
Lorenzo, I know you're a TV expert attorney on the American Rescue Plan. I've seen you on Spanish TV talking about this. Are there any, it is true, by the way, I think it's, are there any like time frames to some of these dollars, or do they tie our hands on the procurement side, or, because I know a lot of times this stuff comes with strings attached.
I'd really have to look at it more
It's
carefully, Mr. Mayor.
by the end of
but
2024.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. As far as what
I've seen him on TV talking about it, so I thought, got it. All right.
The timelines and the requirements of spending the money on the bond and the spending requirements for the American Rescue Plan are actually pretty similar. So on both programs, we have to hustle. I think it's by the end of 24 that we have to have 85% of the bond money spent, not just, hey, you know, we've awarded a contract, spent. So we have to hustle, and we've been doing it. Public Works has done a phenomenal job hustling to get that program up and running. And we have a similar timeline. It may be a little longer, maybe a few more months or maybe a year at the most, but the American Rescue Plan dollars also has a fairly tight timeline, and we're hustling and making sure that we get meet all those timelines and get those projects done. We're very anxious. The mayor asked a meeting or two ago about a timeline for the projects with the bond money. As you can see, I think the first shovel in the ground, I think, is targeted to be in I think it's April of next year, by the time we're ready to begin construction on at least 2 or 3 of those projects. So, be a good day.
Anything else, council? Any other questions of staff? Anything? No? Seeing none?
No. I have a couple things. So you know,
and then Councilman
We did
Dieguez
want to
as
talk
well.
about the parks reservation system, no?
Yes. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to measure the appetite of my colleagues willingness to talk about the franchise fee today, or if we want to have that discussion during I know nobody wants to talk about it ever, but would you prefer to talk about it tonight, or would you prefer to talk about it during the first budget hearing? Okay. All right. So before I do that, let's break the ice with the park reservation software. I happen to think just at first blush, $68,716 is a bit much for. And the way that I think about it, right, is, you know, what's the cost of having a full-time employee whose only job is to work, and that number is about double that, right? So I don't see that, you know, being a realistic number. I mean, I'm sure it came from somewhere because, you know, it's a very precise number, but I think that's something that we need to take a look at. And what I, you know, kind of at first blush, I would tell you that we should be able to accomplish that, you know, with about a third of that cost. And so what I would like to propose is...
Before you move on with that, do we, because I had that on my notes too, so I think it's easier if we talk about it simultaneously. Do we have an estimate of how the revenues generated from park rentals? Do we have like any, I don't know if it's in the budget somewhere, maybe it's in a line item somewhere, and I'm not
Obviously,
looking
there
at
is a historical track record that we have, that we had before. The last 18 months kind of completely did away with that, right? So we can only look at, you know, trying to predict the future.
Right,
We got to
2019.
We got to look at before 2020. So, Melissa.
Because obviously, I don't have the knowledge that Councilmember Fernandez has with regards to the cost of these things. But to me, it also seemed like, I mean, we really have to be realistic about how much we generate revenue from these services that we provide that are not supposed to be money-making services. They're just services that we provide to the community, and how much we spend to actually get the job done. If it's not, I mean, there's no way that we should be spending more on software than what it may potentially generate in revenue.
Yeah, obviously, the rentals will be a perpetual thing year after year. The software, even though there may be some minor, you know, carrying costs as far as maintenance or renewal of licenses or whatever, it's a one-time thing that will be amortized over several years. But
right, no,
Melissa will look and
I
give you
completely
the...
understand. And then another question that I had was, how is it that we do pavilion rentals now? Do we use any kind of software?
We have a software. It's antiquated. It's one that we've had in place for several years. People, when they want to use this system, they have to actually make a phone call, talk to the staff. They have to, you know, give them, you know, the staff helps them create their account, and then after that, then they can pay online. So, you know, let me, Jeremy or Danny, walk the council through the specifics of the existing software as compared to the proposed one, and where the estimate for the proposed one came from.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. Jeremy Bagley, Director of Parks and Recreation. Essentially, that pricing came from looking at a competitively bid process that Doral went through, piggybacking the city of an escalation multiplier on it, and that's how we got to that 68. It may be somewhere closer to the 60 mark, maybe high 50s, but that is what we escalated based off of some of the market analysis that we did. As far as the current level of service, as the manager mentioned earlier in his comments, this was probably one of the lowest rated reviews we got through our surveys. This actual software, in order for someone to complete the pavilion rental, will need to check in, create their account, await approval and confirmation, so contact Jessica, get their account online. Once online, if it's an indoor reservation, there's actually a physical application that needs to be submitted and turned in, reviewed physically, not electronic. And then once upon it goes through a certain amount of approvals, it'll then be issued back directly to the applicant. With this new service, we would actually be able to put all of this online. The entire service, from inception of creating the account to being approved, to filling out the application, going through your approvals in a checklist online, and receiving and paying for your rental or reservation. Another aspect of it is actually being able to bring in some of our athletic providers into our software and actually have their registrations be handled through us. That way, they're not going to a third party. They're not dealing with any issues which sometimes they've had in drop-offs with some of these third parties. And we would be able to actually increase the level of service that we're providing.
With regards to recreational services, so then perhaps that answers your question, Councilmember. This software is going to do much more than pavilion rentals.
Correct.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. It definitely sounds like it. I mean, I'm getting a little bit of heartburn. You know, we're making our service providers process easier at our own expense. So that's giving me a little bit of indigestion. I think if that's the case, we should maybe ask them to bear some of the cost of it. If that's what the substantial improvement is, I'm still having a hard time, you know, kind of justifying, you know, how we achieve return on investment for, you know, a $68,000 park reservation system to, you know, reserve.
Councilmember, we'd be more than happy to meet with you after tonight and go one-on-one and show you the program, show you the information, the specifics from the manufacturer. And if you have a recommendation of something comparable that we can do less expensive, we're all in. And even if this survives the budget process and we put this number in the budget, we'll confide in you and you know, seek your guidance when we actually get to that point of procurement. And then, you know, if it comes in less than, you know, after the fact, then great. A lot of technological things actually go down in price, you would know, right?
Correct.
So they go down in price over time instead of increasing. So we'll seek your guidance, whether it's now or even after the fact, even if this number makes it into the budget.
You know, one of the opportunities that I wouldn't want to be missed, right? So a lot of times we tend to buy all kinds of different systems that specialize in different things, and then we spend even more money to attempt to integrate them, and we do all these things, and sometimes we end up purchasing things that you know, could be repurposed or could be redundant in their service offerings. You know, if we're spending $100,000 to redo the website, a reservation system might be something that could be bundled into that. That may be a module that developer may be able to bring forward for a lot less than 68, you know, grand. We're talking about, you know, enhancements to track it. And when you went through that process, that kind of sounds a lot like the process to get a building permit, right? You go, you apply, you send the form, and you do, like, so that might be something that you might be able to repurpose. I think it's worth exploring. I think it's worth asking, rather than ending up with, you know, 80 different pieces of software that specialize in all these different things. I think we can kind of control that, especially, you know, we have a very, you know, tight IT infrastructure and budget. I'd like to keep it as streamlined as possible. So I definitely want to explore that a little bit more, and I have a potential use for some of these savings, and I know the mayor kind of brushed upon it at the last meeting, and it kind of kept me up at night. And you know, Melissa and I exchanged some emails going over some numbers, and I definitely think it's something that we should pursue, and that would be giving our low-income seniors a rebate of their entire town property tax bill, right? So whatever that figure is for those 396 seniors, it's $42,544. And at the end of the day, right, doing, you know, looking at both numbers, $68,000 for a park reservation system, $42,000 to make sure that every low-income senior in our community pays $0 to the town in property taxes. That, to me, is far more valuable than a deluxe park reservation system. So I think that's something that I would like to see reflected. I don't know how my colleagues feel about that.
So Melissa, it's $42,000. That's it.
For both senior exemptions and long-term senior exemptions, it's 46. So there's 391 senior, and then there's 36 long-term.
But the long-term don't really, I thought the long-term was already at zero.
Yeah, I think they're already at
Because
zero.
we're part of that program. We passed an ordinance years ago, so the long-term don't pay municipal property taxes. So $42,000, and we would take off, how many senior households?
391 or 396.
Man, I'm
391.
happy I inspired you with that conversation the other day at the
What do they consider a senior? Maybe I qualify.
I wouldn't bring that up when we're talking about the budget, Mr. Manager.
Let's carve out the manager exception to that.
So do we want to entertain a little franchise fee conversation? Yes, we said yes.
If I may, to answer Councilwoman Verano's question about the park rentals. So in briefly skimming through it, in 2018, it was about 140,000. In 2019, about 152, and then, of course, in 20, because of COVID, it was at 42.
Thank you, Melissa.
But before we get to the franchise, I want to touch upon that a little bit more. So, because I see that number, and how many households were there again?
391.
So for $42,000, 391 households in the town, low-income seniors don't have to pay property taxes? That's it?
So that averages out to about $100 a household, more or less? I mean, and it's very rough.
I mean, the reality is a lot of the folks bought their houses. Like, I know people in the house that their assessed value in the town, that their assessed value is $40,000, right? So, because they bought it in the 70s or whatever, and so.
Correct.
But yeah, that's, I mean, obviously we can't make a motion tonight, but.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to this this perception issue that, you know, I know Councilman Dieguez brushed upon with the whole how you cut the dollar bill, you know, part, and you know, sometimes residents talk about Miami Lakes taxes, but really the portion that comes to the town is very small compared to their overall tax bill. So yeah, for some of those residents, especially the ones that may not necessarily, I think the long-term low-income senior exemption, they have to be living in the house 25 years. So there might be some that don't necessarily qualify for 25, but they've been there 20 some odd, and they you know, their Miami Lakes portion of their bill is you know, relatively small. So I'd like to see that money go back to them.
I love the idea of saving our seniors a couple of dollars. I really, truly do. I know that aging in place becomes harder and harder for them, and you know, when you work with the Elderly Affairs Committee and you work with seniors like Mr. George Deming, you realize the value that they bring to the community to keep them here for years and years and years. So I love that idea. However, we're going to entertain the franchise fee. So we are going to, in the same breath, save them $120 and increase it on a different side. So I just want us to keep that in mind when we think about our seniors, because I know that I've brought this up in the past. Our seniors also have electric bills, and our seniors also have to pay the franchise fee, and they also have to pay for the increased stormwater service fee for the new bonds. So all in favor of saving, I mean, $40,000 in our budget is really a drop in the bucket, right? When you look at the grand scheme of things, there's things that we can do without to help our seniors age in place, but we have to think about that same context when we talk about an increase to the franchise fee.
Correct. And I think, you know, part of the approach is to look at, you know, everything holistically, and you know, I think whereas, you know, some of the franchise fee increase would be offset by this, so I think it kind of makes it a little bit more fair to some of those seniors. So it's definitely, I brought it up right before, you know, on purpose, because I think it kind of makes that argument a little bit easier, right? That we're not impacting, or at least we're softening the blow on that population. Okay. Franchise fee.
Well, I also actually had a question through the chair to the manager, going back to the list of items that were noted as substantial increases, or at least notable increases in the budget. I don't believe you explained, and again, it's not a high dollar amount, but this is just more for my edification, the increase in town branding of $6,000. What's in that? Like, what is the increase in town branding that we're doing?
Like I said?
Yeah, I think she took off for Cody's orientation for his daycare.
Danny, is that the mythical entrance features that we've been waiting for? No, okay.
Imagination.
We're waiting for.
Yeah, just clarification on what that is, but I don't
Yeah.
want to hold up the meeting because I actually am
Give her a
expecting
second.
some more
Melissa's got the detail from the,
later. No, I believe you, but I don't know if in the meantime, just to save
Okay.
time, if my colleagues want to start on the discussion, the franchise fee,
Got it.
and then
Is Jeff Rodriguez, Councilman Rodriguez, still on? Because
no.
Got it. All right, Councilman Fernandez.
All right. So, I was the one that proposed kind of going into this budget season, looking at that 6% figure, and I wanted to kind of start with, I've been on the dais for 9 months now. It doesn't seem like it, but 9 months that have gone very, very fast. One of the more frustrating things, I must admit, is finding ourselves at every council meeting trying to come up with magical solutions to plug a hole in our sinking ship, right? For far too long, we've prior councils have neglected some infrastructure improvements, and infrastructure is not always the most attractive thing to talk about. I don't, Councilman Rano always talks about shiny objects. Infrastructure's dull, right? Not so shiny, but vitally necessary, right? And I think those conversations every council meeting about the whether it be the exercise equipment here, or the sidewalks there, the cul-de-sacs after that, and we're always looking to cover this new emergency, right? And I think that really works to our disadvantage as a council, because I think our time up here is better used coming up with real measurable ways to improve the town, right? Not doing crisis management of, can we not cut the trees this month and not cut the grass next week so that we can pay for this tot lot improvement, or right. So I kind of I think the franchise fee is our opportunity to change that dynamic. I asked the manager to provide me a list, and I'm not sure if he shared it with the rest of my colleagues, but every other municipality in Miami-Dade County has a higher franchise fee than we do, right? The next closest municipality is 2.28 percentage points higher than we are, right? Almost double, 40% higher than we are. We sit alone in the communities at 3%, and we do so at our own detriment, having these infrastructure needs that we need to plug up. I think one of the things that sets us apart from some of those municipalities, most of those other municipalities, those funds go into their general revenue fund and they get used for whatever. I think Councilmember Dieguez's ordinance from 2 years ago really does a good job at protecting the town and protecting the residents. and making sure that any excess monies that are levied through that franchise fee are specifically used for infrastructure projects. They're not used for pie in the sky. They're used for real, tangible maintenance of our streets, of our sidewalks, of our striping, of our tree canopy, which are the things that, I think are the most lacking in our community. We drive around the town and we talk about all of the great things about this community. And when I canvassed, I spoke to every resident that would open the door and give me a chance to speak to them, and not one of them ever told me that the reason that they live in Miami Lakes is because we have the lowest franchise fee in Miami-Dade County. And none of them chose to move their business here because we have 98% of the residents don't know what the FPL franchise fee is. 100% of the residents know that their sidewalks need repair, that their streets need to be repaved more aggressively, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have an opportunity, a real opportunity to change that dynamic and not have to have these awkward conversations every single meeting. If we move and we adopt a franchise fee that's more in line with everyone else's, right? I think we're trying to fight the battle with one arm tied behind our back unnecessarily. So that's kind of how I'd like to open the discussion. I'd really like to hear what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you. So I don't think that I've ever made it a secret that I'm not in favor of raising the franchise fee, and it'll be no different today. When we look at the things that we can accomplish when we have the funds to do so, and when we look at a list, for example, of all of the things that we're incorporating into our new budget that have nothing to do with the franchise fee, because the franchise fee is, the funds are designated. When we look at all of the things such as a new website and new branding, and I've never had a resident tell me that they live in Miami Lakes because of the branding, or because we have a great website, or because, we have another staff member, or because, we're getting new park reservation software. When we look at all of these things, travel, lobbyists, all of these things, this is our problem. We will never have an extra penny that is not spent, because we are constantly trying to attain everything, right? So if I were to think that there wasn't any money to fix a sidewalk or fix a pothole, then I would be in favor of going to the only alternative, which would be the franchise fee or raising the millage, right? Because at this point, there's no difference. I favor more a franchise fee increase than a millage fee increase, because it's a consumer-based fee. So I think it's a little more equitable, right? There's a lot of things on here that we can do without. Plenty of things. We don't need a new website. We don't need to rebrand, or we don't need more branding. I, for one, make it a point that every time that I Facebook something or put something, we are growing beautifully. I do my fair share of branding as much as I can. There's tons of things here that we can do without. So at this point at least, I'm not in favor. I know that residents call me all the time, and we have increases in millage, increases in ad valorem. We have increases that we receive from other revenue sources, yet we never seem to have enough, because every dime that we have, we will spend. And so there's things that are earmarked for projects that are coming, may not be coming. There's a whole bunch of things that we can do, and we've shown that we can tighten our belts. Now, if we have another $1 million, we'll definitely spend that too. We'll spend it on infrastructure. There's plenty of infrastructure that needs it. I just don't feel that it's something that I would support, but that's really not a change of pace for me, right? I've always been on the same page with regards to that. And if we were to move in the direction of a franchise fee increase, I definitely wouldn't support a full 6%. That's just going to the maximum rate, because that's what's available. If it were a 10, municipalities would be at a 10. We can tax all we want. We have the ability to do so. We can raise the millage all we want. If we ever have the need, we can raise the millage. If another council down the line has the need, they can raise the millage. The franchise fee, I understand what you said, right? Because I also received the list. We are the only municipality that's not at a 6. There's a couple that are at a 5.9. I don't know whether they were afraid of the 6. I'm not sure what that even means. It's symbolic, if anything.
Yeah, I think from a symbolic standpoint, 5.9 gives you the second lowest millage in Miami-Dade County.
Agreed.
You can say
You can say that you're the second
there's-
lowest, or we didn't
Right.
increase it as much as we could. And that's what politicians do that people hate. Because
Exactly.
it's absolutely ridiculous. So I understand your point, and I do feel that there are a lot of infrastructure needs. I campaigned this last season as well. And I would say that more than 90% of the people that open the door walk you outside to their front yard and show you the street and the sidewalk and the roots of the trees that are damaging their driveway. And I've seen more swales and approaches and roots than I've ever seen in my entire life, because that is what people complain about. So I will agree with you there that that is what people like, and that's not flashy and not cute and not something that gets us a lot of attention, right? Neither is stormwater, but we took that plunge, right? That's an improvement that we need. It's also not a flashy thing, but I, for one, I can say that at least at this point, I don't have an appetite for a higher franchise fee. Definitely not at a 6%, but then now we have both perspectives. I'm assuming that maybe we can have somebody in the middle give us somewhere in the middle, maybe.
I guess I'll go up next. In the past, of course, it's no secret, I did support a 6% franchise fee, along with Councilmember Rodriguez. And part of the reason for that at the time was where we were at. We were looking at a situation where we were going to have a shortfall. We made over $500,000 in cuts to our budget, and in order to accommodate the cycle that we had that year. And I thought that going to 6% would not only allow us to pay back and reinstate those funds faster, but also would help us with the legal bills that we were expecting at the time from the bridge litigation, some of the other litigation that we saw on the horizon. My concern with doing any sort of increase in the franchise fee this year at this point is, again, as the councilwoman pointed out, we are already imposing a substantial increase on our residents in terms of their cost of living. And putting aside the rebate that you would like to do for our seniors, which I'm on board with, we also have a broader population out there too that are seeing these increases. And fortunately, though times have been pretty good for most people economically in our town, that that everybody's situation is different. The cost of living is just going through the roof, no pun intended. And so I'm a little cautious about having a 100% increase in our stormwater fee, not rolling back the millage rate, which of course amounts to an increase because of the good part is that it's as a result of increasing property assessments. And then also just the general cost of living. Again, inflation's up 5%. I think was the last number, all around. So I just am not sure about, doing it now. And also, like I said, to me, there was an urgency last time that I just don't believe exists here right now. And then the other thing, though, too, is I probably would want to revisit the ordinance to extend some of the restrictions that were in there. For example, one of them was a prohibition on pledging franchise fee money toward a bond of any sort for a certain amount of time. I believe last year was the last year that restriction applied to. I would prefer to see it extended to make sure that it focuses on infrastructure. And of course, because of the massive amount of investment that we're making now with our stormwater program, I would actually prefer to omit the stormwater allowance that's in that ordinance as well, to focus in on the other aspects of infrastructure that we've identified. And then the other concern that I've had is along the lines of a concern that Councilwoman Morano brought up, which is that, I just don't trust us as a council to stay focused. This has been the recurring issue, and my frustration with the Optimist Park, for example, is that pay-as-you-go to me just never worked because we just, both us, as we're currently constituted, as we were constituted before, and in the past, past councils and us have just not done enough, I think, to really focus on tackling one big ticket item at a time, and that's why it never really took off. And so as a result, I think we're looking at, at all sorts of other funding mechanisms to, kind of play catch up with that. But in closing, again, I'm not saying no right now, but I'm leaning toward no, and I would say, those are my present concerns. The cost of living is going up, and again, I can read votes up here, and I think it's safe to say that we will have some kind of bond referendum next year on the Optimus Park, which again is a tax increase. So I just don't know if I want to be adding to the cost of living. To me, having the lowest franchise fee, while I get it, what you're saying, it puts us at a somewhat disadvantage up to a point with other municipalities. We've always been one, though, in our ethos, a municipality that prides ourselves on doing more with less. And, and I take pride in that, and I don't view the 3% franchise necessarily as a negative from an image perspective. I actually think that's a point of pride. But I agree with you that, yeah, most residents don't even know it exists. But I don't know if that necessarily means that it, is necessarily a reason to increase the fee. At any rate, the point is I have some substantive concerns with respect to the ordinance, wanting to revisit that I'll be discussing with the manager, between now and second reading on the budget. And then also, I'm not sure if I want to add to the cost of living in the town at this time. That's another, concern that's weighing on my mind, a policy consideration. And yeah, it's really those two things. So, and I've already shared this with the manager when we spoke earlier, and I'll be taking time to deliberate and really think about it. But I at the very least, if I were to support it again, I would want to see some, again, those changes that I just mentioned to the existing ordinance.
I guess I'll go, Councilman. You're almost a little, I would say, ahead of your time, right? I've seen the progression on the dais from a time where there was zero investment in our community to where now there's a historic amount of investment, and you want to take it to that next level. So I know for you it's frustrating. I rode bike right down your block the other day, and right across the street, I think it's Guanches. Their house is immaculate. Everybody's house on that block, they're investing tens of thousands of dollars into their homes, yet the entire road is full of potholes, right? So, I mean, that's, even the private sector at this point, when I first got elected, we weren't making any investments, but neither was the private sector, right? A lot of the homes in Loch Lomond still look like you were in the 70s. A lot of the houses in the East Lakes never got, West Lakes, asked Danny Angel when I went on the ride along West Lakes, you hadn't seen major. Fast forward to 2021, most people in the town are making major investments on their home, but I think the infrastructure isn't matching that investment, and it's a reality. The private sector has surpassed the public sector in those types of investments. That's just a fact. My biggest concern, too, is I just don't think staff has the bandwidth for more money or for more projects. That's just being real. Look, Carlos does a great job. He's had a budget for $4 or $5 million for several years. Now it's going to go up to $35 million, and he's going to have to perform on all these things with a small staff. I just don't see, if we were to give them all this money, on a yearly, there is no way that I can see them, performing to the level that we need to perform. I'd like to look at the model that, Weston or Hialeah Garden, different cities are looking at, but I can tell you, Carlos is going to do a great job with the stormwater bond, but I just don't know across the board. And I'd love to see between now and our first budget hearing, all the shovel-ready projects that are not pending. Because look, little things that we did, striping the streets, the cul-de-sacs, the amount of residents that have called me and said, you know what, that's the right thing to do. That's what the city should be focused on. Those are the things that really make a difference in people's lives. So between now and then, I just would like more information specifically on what is shovel ready. There's no way we can give a blank check and to say, hey, we saw, look at the crosswalks, look at the gate over here for the police. there's no way that I can vote for a 6% franchise fee and tell with a straight face tell our residents, well, it's stuck. All the projects are stuck in purgatory and permitting. There's no chance I'll ever do that. But if you come to me and you say, Manny, you know, there's 10 projects that if we get the funds tomorrow, we can break ground in a week, but the franchise fee goes up I mean, those are the discussions that I know residents really appreciate. But the other one, just filling those coffers and not performing, and it's not their fault, right? I mean, they're going to be more swamped than ever. The amount of approvals Carlos put on our agenda last meeting, the amount of folks that he's working with, subcontractors, engineers, this, that, I mean, he is all over the place with the new CIP director. But yeah, I just don't know if just saying, hey, here's an extra $900,000, what can you do? You know, when are you going to perform? Oh, well, you know, it's stuck in permitting, it's stuck here. There's zero chance I'll do that. And I just know staff just can't at the moment. There's no way that they can. But between now and then, if there are projects that you can say, hey, there's 5 projects. If we raise it at 3.5, we can do these 5 projects this year immediately. You know, those are different discussions that I know our residents appreciate. But just raising it like that, and I know, and again, you are in your thought process, you might be maybe 10 years ahead of the curve in terms of town politics, because people want to see more investment in the community. So just between now and then, if you can bring a list of concrete projects that we can accomplish, not projects that maybe later on we'll do. But I wanted to give that example because I was riding bike near and I was reminded, I go, man, these people just spent $200,000 on their house, the people across the street, and it's full of potholes. And I think that's also an issue that needs to be addressed. But that's where I'm at, and I know that our residents appreciate honest discussions, straightforward discussions, and more than anything, delivering. Because every time we deliver on something, the more trust is placed on this dais. And even small things like cul-de-sacs, I don't know about you guys, but the amount of people that called me to tell me, you guys are doing a great job, the street striping, just little things like that, goes a long way.
Mayor, and if I can kind of close it out. So, no. Okay, well, I'll close it out. Sans Councilmember Diaz. So, and thank you for that feedback, because that kind of helps me. So I think the challenge and challenge accepted, right, is when we're talking. If we sit here and we look at what's here before us, which is $900,000, and we're going to split it up into X for roads and X for sidewalks and X for whatever, it seems kind of very abstract. So what the mission that I will take on between now and the first budget hearing is sitting with Director Acosta and coming forward with a list with costs of specific areas that have been identified, not sidewalk improvements on 87th Avenue from this block to this block at this cost, and come forward with a list of projects. I think one thing that's very telling, and Director Acosta, if you can speak to this, I think at some point, and I want to say April or May, I asked about an issue with a sidewalk, and the response that I got in April or May was that the funds for sidewalk replacements had been expended for the year, right? So if we're expending the monies, I think there might be more bandwidth than we think there is, right? Because if we got to April and we're halfway through the budget year and we're done with our sidewalk money, then I think there's an opportunity there to crank out more projects that we need. So I'll take the challenge on going back with staff and through Manager Peterman and coming back with a list of quantifiable projects, and then we can have a discussion. Does it do we necessarily have to go to 6%? Well, maybe not. Maybe that list yields a different number, and maybe there's appetite for that list. What I can tell you is, there's a very, very big gap between the number that we're at and our current set of needs and what that number could be and what we can accomplish. And, you know, I think I feel confident that we can find some solution that, you know, we can all live with. So, thank you.
Thank you. Interesting for me in closing, and you know, because I got to get out of here after these comments. But the other part that I just wanted to tack on was just that the number of people that I've spoken to around town that say, "Oh, we love it here," and I ask them, you know, what do you think we can do better? Most people don't have an answer. They think we do a pretty good job now, and I understand that, you know, we can do so much more. But again, what holds me back is, you know, the increase of the cost of living. You know, not just the 5% inflation increase, but again, all these other things that we've done and will be doing that are going to naturally increase the cost to live here. And I just think that, you know, you got to learn, you know, you got to crawl before you walk, right? And as the mayor pointed out, we're almost already sprinting, and this would just, you know, basically be methamphetamines, you know, for us. But so, you know, I just think that we're doing a good job now. I think we need to keep at it. My concern, to the mayor's point about identifying specific projects, is that, you know, obviously if you were to even increase the franchise fee to 3.5 or 3.9, whatever, to accommodate those projects, is that's recurring funding, right? So, I mean, you know, you finish those projects and then what do? You know, I guess you identify, you know, 5 different other projects, whatever, but then you still get to, for me, my concern would be this sort of creep, right? This mission creep. There, where, you know, now we're wedded to that, and then next you know, next year it's going to go up a little bit more, and it becomes a backdoor increase. So, I don't know. I'm just saying that I'm inclined to vote no at this time on that. I think that, as the mayor said, we got a lot of projects already in the pipeline, and then the other aspect of it is just, you know, for me, is just, I don't, you know, I think that we're maybe putting more of a burden on the rest of our residents that we don't need to be imposing right now for the level of service that they're already getting, that they seem to be pretty happy with. And the other aspect of it is, yeah, and I've mentioned this before, and I believe I brought it up last with the stormwater debate. Everybody's going to tell you, we want this, we want that, we want this, that, and the other. But then you start telling them, you know, it's going to cost this, and now they start to be like, you know. So just something else to consider, though, too, is, like, of course, we want to accommodate our residents, but let's also be mindful of their pocketbook, and then also the fact that a lot of times, you know, they tell us what they want, but then when you tell them what the cost is, and they start to say, well, maybe we don't need that right now. And so I'm just proposing that maybe this is a situation where maybe we don't need this right now.
I wanted to add, I really do like the idea that the mayor has of attaching a dollar figure to a project that we can identify and saying, okay, we're going to tackle this project this year. The franchise fee gives us the ability to change it on a yearly basis, once a year. So we don't have to stick to it. We don't have to live with it. It's something that we can, if something merits, you know, addressing right away and there's no other way to address it, I am in favor of doing something like that. I like that idea more than these random numbers that we see, like you said, that we can't identify, right? If it's a sidewalk that I walk over every day, I walk down Commerce Way every day, and I can tell you that most of that stretch needs to be redone, right? Because there's a lot of broken sidewalks. So if you can identify it, it gives you maybe a little bit more of an appetite. But I still can't upgrade $100,000 on my website to increase a franchise fee. Like, I can't do both of those things at the same time. At least I wouldn't be able to sit with a resident and say, well, I fixed your sidewalk and I raised your franchise fee, but, you know, now you got a brand new website. Like, it doesn't reconcile in my mind. So our website's not the best, but there's tons of other places that don't have great websites either. So I think that for what we use it, it's, at least for me, it's okay. And that's just, I'm just using that as an example. There's a lot of other things here that I think we can do without that doesn't allow me to justify when I sit with someone, you know, okay, you raised my franchise fee because we needed that money. We cannot accomplish, you cannot fix the sidewalk in front of my house because we don't have the money for that. But we do have money for travel, for food, for lobbyists, for websites, for branding, I just can't justify that. When I say that I don't have the funding, it's because I don't have it. So but I do like the list of the idea of bringing forth a list and seeing what it is that we can do with that.
Okay.
I apologize. I had to step out for
We
a
were having the
moment.
franchise fee discussion without you.
Yeah, no, I can see that. You know, I think I've made my my point several times before. I know that there's always going to be projects. I know that there's always going to be an appetite to do more. And even when we satisfy all the projects, there's going to be more. It is this continuing pit-pocketing of our residents that I think is what I have a sensitivity for. We can raise taxes, we can raise franchise fees, we can spend the world, but it's very hard for us to go back. And I go back to that person who struggled with weight loss all their life. You know, I happen to be one of those individuals, right? The minute you inch that belt open more, it's very hard to go back. And it's what the temptation is there all the time, right? The temptation to say, but we can do this, but we can do that. I'm telling you, when you open up that belt, it's 5 times, if not 10 times harder to go back down. So, you know, my sensitivity, and I'm sorry I catch the tail end, but this is something that I'm very passionate about and kind of similar, and I didn't hear the mayor's comments. I only caught the tail end of the conversation, but I understand where Councilwoman Ronald's, we're really tackling a lot of wants on those lists, right? And some of those wants are associated with dire need. And if that's what it takes, right, to go into that franchise fee and increase that franchise fee or look at it through the ad valorem budget, I'm going to be looking at it with a fine-tooth comb. And if I see certain expenditures, and I think you illustrated one that happens to be 6 figures, but I'm not picking on that one. I'm going through the entire budget in its entirety. And like you said, because I've been hit with that as well, right? A resident calls me, and we can't fix this today because in 6 months, the budget's already exhausted. Well, are we doing a poor job budgeting? Are we not prioritizing where we need to be spending the money? Because the wants will always be there, though. So I'm going to go back into the meeting and catch the beginning part of the conversation just so I can catch up. But I kind of sit along where Marilyn sits, and you know, I kind of gave you a little tidbit of you know, again, inching that belt open. It's very hard to go back, and it's kind of what Councilman Dieguez said as well. So thank you.
Yeah, like, look, one of the items that when you talk to Director Acosta, I mean, I'd love to see how, if we can contract a milling and resurfacing crew, you know, it's you know, to kind of a year-round thing. I mean, there's no reason why, like I gave that example of the Guanches house because I feel bad, man. They all invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into their homes, and there's potholes everywhere in front of their house. And so just giving you food for thought. You know, we're not voting on anything tonight, but between now and the budget cycle, and like what Councilman Ronald, you know, just those are the types, you know, come with some concrete stuff like that. If you know,
I definitely have an appreciation for the pavement in front of the Guanches house because I used to be their front door neighbor, so it was my patch of broken asphalt as well.
Did receive an email that I'm sure we all got copied on from Hope Reynolds, giving kudos to the manager for taking care of a whole bunch of potholes, like, overnight. Like, she sent the pictures and they needed repair, and management addressed it right away. She was very, very happy. I'm not sure if it's in the same area, nowhere near the same area, but thank you for doing that. She was very happy that we were able to handle that for her.
all right. Thank you guys very much. We'll see you soon. I don't know if we have any. Madam Clerk, when's our next meeting? Got it. All right. We'll see you next week. Have a good night.